The world's greatest challenge started in October of 1929 with an unanticipated end to the Roaring Twenties. The stock market crashed and the Great Depression began. But how, in just one day, did an era of such prosperity turn into this, one of complete despair? A cycle powered by the drastic measures taken by Americans led to this disaster. First, a society in which the wealthy were extremely wealthy and the poor were extremely poor. The few who were wealthy controlled the flow of the economy, and if they stopped loaning to the poor, the economy came to a screeching halt.
With peace and glory ahead, why should I be standing in line?
Second, the overproduction of goods, which meant less of an income for farmers and other small businesses. This led to the laying off of tens of thousands of workers.
Once I built a railroad.
Third, the overuse of credit. Before the crash, people bought lots of things with money they didn't have. When unemployment rose, many could not pay back their debt.
Once I built a railroad.
The Great Depression had many effects. Crime rates went up and wages went down. Families were living on very little. Banks failed and the unemployment rate reached 25%. People, especially men, were depressed and sad because they felt as though they had let their families down.
Rivet and lime. Once I built a tower, now it's done.
After World War I, the world was dominated by unstable economies, so when the U.S. pulled its investments out of Europe and started a trend of raising tariffs, the Depression went global.
Full of that yang.
Each of the world's major powers had its own way of dealing with this crisis. Germany hoped to avoid it by printing more currency, but this only caused inflation. France increased worker pay and benefits. Even still, unemployment rates were high. Great Britain set high tariffs, high taxes, and regulated its currency, but experienced high employment nevertheless. Japan relied highly on trade to keep its economy running, but used an economic stimulus to get out of the mess. The United States elected a Democrat, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, as president, hoping he could fix the growing problem. He came up with the New Deal, a recovery program in which the 3 R's were promised: relief, recovery, and reform. The New Deal passed acts that ensured better pay and economic security, and created agencies that rebuilt communities and gave the unemployed opportunities. One of the most successful programs was the CCC, a relief program for unemployed, unmarried men between the ages of 17 and 23. During its 9-year existence, 2.5 million men took part in conserving natural resources through various projects, while sending money home.
I'm your pal.
In the 1930s and 1940s, President Roosevelt's actions affected politics and the economy. He provided pensions to the elderly, insurance to the unemployed, and help to the blind, deaf, and disabled. He also made economic change by creating Social Security and income taxes. By doing all of this, he took money out of the private sector and put it into the public sector. Several things led to World War II. First, the Treaty of Versailles made Germany pay war reparations, claiming it should take blame for the war. Germans grew bitter as they struggled to pay off this debt, so when Hitler emerged, they believed he could help them out of their crisis. Next, the Great Depression caused heavy unemployment worldwide, leaving many hurting. Powerful dictators such as Adolf Hitler rose to power promising change. Also, Germany and Italy were governed by fascism, so they believed they were right to start the war, and they believed wholeheartedly that they would win. Instead of negotiating for peace with other countries, they fought on. Finally, Allied appeasement made Hitler believe he could easily gain back German territory by invading Poland and Russia without causing a big problem with the Allied forces. However, Britain made a deal with Poland saying it would come to its aid if Hitler attacked it. The Allied forces did not respond to fascist aggression until the last minute. Britain and France created the Munich Pact in September of 1938 to appease Germany. However, when Hitler invaded Poland in 1939, they honored their treaty with Poland and declared war on Germany. The fighting of World War II took place mainly in 4 places: the European theater, the Eastern Front, North Africa, and the Pacific Theater. 2 of the greatest turning points of the war were D-Day and the attack on Pearl Harbor. On D-Day, Germany was attacked from all sides and pushed back onto its home front. This spread the Germans thin because they now had to fight on 3 fronts. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. This triggered the American entrance to the war.
feels like coagulating. I'm sitting here.
The weapons used in World War II were mostly improved weapons from World War I. Machine guns, much lighter and much more effective than ever before, were commonly used. Airplanes were used for combat, as well as for transportation of supplies.
Marches alone, they can't bring integration.
At first, the US was not eager to fight when war broke out in Europe, so it isolated itself. It then started the Lend-Lease Act, supplying Allied nations with ships, aircrafts, weapons, and other materials. The attacks on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese caused the US to officially enter the war and join the Allied forces. The US's funds and efforts were all put into producing weapons and supplies, recruiting troops, and fighting. It was total war. Women were put to work in factories making ammunition, tanks, and guns. African American men fought in the war and occupied non-combat positions. Japanese Americans were discriminated against and treated harshly because of their relation to the enemy side. Many were placed in internment camps. Mexican Americans were able to fight, but faced discrimination and received little credit for their services.
You may leave here for 4 days in space, yeah, but
When the US dropped atomic bombs on Japanese cities, Japan was forced to surrender. With Germany's ally gone, it realized it had little hope of winning, and the end of the war was finally coming into view.
don't leave a trace and hate your next.
The war had several consequences. First, over 6 million Jews had died as a result of the Holocaust. After the Holocaust, Jews no longer had a place to call home. Israel was created. Also, the United Nations was founded in 1945 to prevent wars and world conflict. Finally, after World War II, the US and the Soviet Union were the strongest nations. During the Cold War, they competed for power. The hard times the Germans lived in after World War I let Hitler rise to power and start World War II. Desperate times can lead to desperate measures.